The Slave Quilt Code. Back in the 1990s, an intriguing idea arose. People began claiming that during the American Civil War, 1861 through 1865, African slaves in the southern states used a secret code to help one another escape north to freedom. The code consisted of patterns sewn into quilt blocks by slave women. For example, a pattern called wagon wheel meant to quickly load up a wagon and prepare to head north, and a pattern called shoe fly signaled that a friendly guide waited nearby to help. Such quilts helped runaway slaves make their way along a network of routes known as the Underground Railroad to freedom. Films and books sprang up about how these bed covers, with their secret messages sewn by slave women, saved lives and led enslaved people to freedom. The popular Oprah Winfrey TV show even featured these claims and stories. The public loved these thrilling accounts of adventures from America's past. But wait, how true were they? These quilt code accounts were exciting, yes, and people wanted them to be historically accurate, but were they? Many historians have studied slavery and the Underground Railroad. These historians reviewed the evidence. None of it appeared to come directly from the slaves, they concluded. There were no letters and no news articles quoting the slaves themselves. It all came from stories passed along by word of mouth, and none of the quilts used to help runaway slaves could be found. Still, many books were written concerning these oral accounts, exciting stories of secret hiding places, life threatening encounters, and midnight escapes. But there were no documents to back up these quilt code claims. Based on the lack of strong evidence, we must conclude that quilts played no special role in the Underground Railroad. Number 1. Read the sentence. It all came from stories passed along by word of mouth. The author most likely used the phrase word of mouth to suggest A. The stories were written down, B. The stories were well known, C. The stories were read in books, D. The stories were told over and over. Number 2. Read the paragraph. But wait, how true were they? These quilt code accounts were exciting, yes, and people wanted them to be historically accurate. But were they? What is the most likely reason the author included this paragraph? A. To introduce a contrasting idea. B. To explain the evidence described in the first part of the text. C. To provide additional information about the topic. D. To make the reader want to read more. Number 3. What did people believe the pattern of the wagon wheel signified? A. To quickly load up a wagon and prepare to head north. B. That a friendly guide waited nearby to help. C. To sew another quilt. D. To move quickly to the next location on the Underground Railroad. Number 4. Which sentence best states the main idea of this passage? A. Slaves used patterns sewn into quilts to help each other reach freedom. B. The Oprah Winfrey Show featured a story about how slaves used secret codes on quilts to send each other messages. C. Although an interesting theory, there is no evidence to suggest that slaves used secret codes sewn onto quilts. D. The only evidence to support the idea that slaves used secret code comes from word of mouth. Number 5. Which detail from the text best supports your answer in question 4? A. People began claiming that during the American Civil War, 1861 through 1865, African slaves in the southern states used a secret code to help one another escape north to freedom. B. This code consisted of patterns sewn into quilt blocks by slave women. C. It all came from stories passed along by word of mouth. D. Based on the lack of strong evidence, we must conclude that quilts played no special role in the Underground Railroad.